Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 44, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Folks, let me tell you about Patriot Home Services, a reliable company who stands by their work and comes in on time and on budget. Patriot Home Services is located in the Woodlands, Texas, and offers a wide array of services. Cody Dawson, the owner, is a hands-on contractor who will follow through on your project and will leave you having perhaps the best contracting experience you've ever had. Whether you need home additions, remodels, outdoor patios and kitchens, flooring, painting, and much more, one call does it all. Patriot Home Services, 720-745-2568. Or visit them online at patriothomeservicesllc.com. That's patriothomeservicesllc.com. We have a very special guest joining us on today's program. It's not every day that you get to sit down with a former member of Team USA and an Olympic medalist in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Adam Wheeler does not come from a wrestling family. As a young man, he grew up with economic troubles as his mother was left alone to care for him and his two siblings. As an infant, he nearly died as a result of a rare blood disease. Adam Wheeler is the last American to earn an Olympic medal for the United States in Greco Roman Wrestling. Adam's path was not as you would expect, having started his wrestling career as a high school freshman with a record of 1 win and 15 losses. Adam has publicly displayed that through hard work, discipline, perseverance, resilience, and pure strength, through determination, you can accomplish anything. Adam also credits his mental toughness that he has learned through wrestling has helped him in critical incidents while working as a police officer and serving on the SWAT team. Adam is now a firefighter in Denver, Colorado, and is proudly serving his community. Adam is a dedicated public servant and an extremely proud husband and father. With that, we are honored to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Adam Wheeler. How are you, brother?
I'm good, thanks. That's quite the introduction there.
Hey, man, I'm just trying to, your bio is, it's thick. You know what I mean? Your bio's thick, so I'm just trying to give you some credit there that your story deserves and to bring in honorably, again, the way that you deserve to be brought in on any podcast or on any show for that reason. How are you doing today, Adam?
I'm good. I'm doing well. I was excited to do this with you when you asked me about it. I was like, heck yeah, do a podcast with my old buddy. So yeah, hey. I'm excited.
Yep. We are definitely great friends from a very long time ago when we first met. Heck, it's been, I don't know, 15 years maybe?
Yeah, I think we met in probably 2008, right around that time frame when I joined the gym that you went to. And yeah.
And then we were workout partners for a little while, and you kind of tore me up a few times. And still look at you, man, looking massive.
Well, I try to keep in shape. I try to work out, but it's a balance nowadays.
I tell you what, you actually work out, and it's not the other way around. Those weights don't work out you. Those weights. I tell you what, man. Folks, if you don't know Adam, if you've never seen this guy in person, this guy is a mountain of a man. This guy is pure solid muscle. Again, an Olympic athlete, a world-class athlete, folks. So guys like this don't come around very often, especially as genetically gifted as Adam is. But listen, we have got so much to talk about here on today's show. there's so much value that you can add to the lives of everyday people, especially kids, especially young athletes, and really for anybody. For that sake, your story is unique, and again, it's one that is very deserving of being told. And I'm going to do my best today to tell it in a way that will make sense to folks and that will really hopefully drive home some inspiration that folks are looking for in today's world. I think a lot of folks are looking for that feel-good story, and we will deliver that today as we tell your story here on this podcast. But you grew up as a kid in Lancaster, California. Can you describe your childhood for us, Adam?
Sure. If you're familiar with Lancaster, you kind of know that it's a suburb in LA. When I was growing up, it's in the desert, so it's hot, similar to like a Las Vegas climate. Some people would say that it's not quite as nice as the other parts of LA. A lot of people that would work in LA would commute to Lancaster because it was cheaper to live, and definitely kind of a rough area to live and grow up. Now, with that said, there's of course the nice parts of the city too. But I grew up in a pretty rough area, and was a normal kid growing up, rode my bike everywhere I went, played baseball as a young kid, wanted to be a professional baseball player, thought I was tough because I was running around with other kids that thought they were tough, and never really had like a work ethic or knew what hard work was until I had a rude awakening when I decided I was going to try out for the wrestling team my freshman year in high school. And like you said on the introduction, I thought I was tough because of, like I said, my friends and how I grew up and who I grew up with. But I learned really quick on the wrestling mats, and it humbled me in a different way, that I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. And that's kind of, the rest is history. Obviously the wrestling story continues, but yeah.
Sure. So did you run with a rough crowd growing up in Lancaster, or were you just hanging out with just average kids, say?
You know what? I think I had a pretty good group of friends. There's a couple kids that we definitely hung out with, some kids that were rough, in gangs, ended up in prison, stuff like that. But I also kind of understood my role. And I grew up with some kids that were super talented athletes, some really good kids. And I kind of knew from a young age who I wanted to pick as my friends. So yes, definitely was around the wrong crowd for a while. Didn't always make the best decisions as a young kid. I actually remember getting bullied as a young kid. And I'm talking, middle school and younger, getting bullied a little bit, but also being a bully. So it was just kind of, you had to have like that tough guy persona, and when there was somebody tougher than you, they were going to bully you. And it was good. But, the friends that I did have that I would consider my friends, where I'm still in contact with them today, are some really good people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, some of the kids you're hanging out with probably weren't the best kids to hang around. The example, like I always tell my kids, you are who you roll with. You are who you roll with. If you hang out with hoodlums, you're gonna be a hoodlum. If you hang out with successful people, you will be successful. And that's just pure fact. So that's good that you were able to see, okay, these may not be the best kids for me, but these kids are. So let me veer over here and be with like-minded people because I want to be successful in life. And that's what a lot of kids don't understand is that, hey, I'm a great kid, but a lot of my friends are bad kids. Eventually, the bad kids are going to bring down that good kid.
Yeah.
And so that's what, a lot of kids need to understand, and a lot of parents as well. I'm sure they all know that. But now, your first sport was baseball. How long would you end up playing baseball at a competitive level?
So I started baseball as a young kid, 4 years old, 5 years old, T-ball, all the way through. I know you lived in California for a while, so you understand California. Just in general, just the baseball is just good there. At least it was when I grew up. And I played, and it was just little league. We didn't have all this. I could go down the whole wormhole with the club baseball because I have two boys that are doing that now. Yep, and I know you do too. And but I grew up playing baseball. I loved baseball. I thought I was going to be a pro baseball player. I played with two people who ended up actually getting drafted. One of them played in the MLB for 5 years, and then one of them got drafted but never ended up making it up to the. I don't even know if he made it to the minor leagues or not, but was drafted, and so it was good competition, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then for whatever reason, I don't know what it was. Talking about my upbringing a little bit, I was a knucklehead in school, so I was able to wrestle my freshman year in high school. It was horrible. Was the worst kid on the team. Was weak. Couldn't do a push-up. Couldn't run a lap around the track without stopping. Like I was very, very not conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to wrestle, but right after the wrestling season, I got disqualified from sports for my grades. So I wasn't even eligible to play baseball my freshman year in high school. And that was kind of the end of it. I played for what we used to call senior league. I don't know if it's still called that anymore, but it was basically like the 15U level of baseball. Played for that. And then after that, I never stepped on the field again and played baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, were you always driven as a kid? Did you always have a competitive edge, or were you just kind of like a go along to get along type athlete through your childhood years?
I was always competitive. I wasn't always the best athlete. As a young kid, I was always one of the better baseball players per se. And I was always super competitive. We'd play our games, and then all we would do was play baseball on our own too. And there's one of the kids that I grew up with that's a really good friend of mine is one of the kids that actually ended up getting drafted. There was one day when I was playing strikeout with him, and I remember when I realized, I was like, oh man, he's way better than me. And it was like overnight, like all of a sudden this kid was just better than me, and looking back now, he was kind of an early bloomer, like maturity wise, and just got bigger and stronger and did all that stuff faster. But like, I still remember that day, and I remember trying to compete with everybody. And I always wanted to be the best at the things I did. So imagine me going in to my freshman year and being the worst kid on the team. Like that took some courage to just not quit and give up, because I hated losing.
Now, folks, you guys got to understand something about Adam Wheeler as a freshman. He wasn't engaged in school, didn't do his work like he was supposed to, got bad grades, ended up having one win and 15 losses. One win and 15 losses. Now, many kids would have given up and walked away from that. Perhaps joined that wrong crowd, again, that you were talking about. Did it ever cross your mind to throw that singlet in the trash, cut and run, and try something different?
So I was kind of motivated differently than a lot of people were. The end of my freshman year, we had an assistant coach on our team, and he was telling all the kids, hey, you should try this wrestling camp, and you should do this, and you should do this. And I walked up to the coach and I just asked him, I said, hey, what wrestling camp should I try? And he said, oh, you're not ready for a wrestling camp yet. And so basically he was saying, like, I'm not good enough, to do that yet. And like, it hurt my feelings. I remember being, I'm 14, 15, maybe at the time, hurt my feelings. But I always tell people all this story a little bit because they always say, you started wrestling so late. How did you become so good? And the reason is because I hated not being good at it. And I hated somebody not believing in me, like my assistant coach at that time. And so from that day forward, I was pretty mature in the fact that I knew what I needed to do. And that was get in shape, get stronger. So after that freshman year of wrestling season, my mom couldn't afford a gym membership. There was a 24-hour fitness a mile from my house. It was actually called something else back then, but 24 eventually bought them out. But it was a mile from my house. I would run to the gym, lift weights, run back. And I promised my mom I would pay for it on my own. So I started mowing yards and doing all these, the side jobs to pay for it. And it was like $15 a month or something. It wasn't expensive, but I don't think she at that time really believed like I was going to be that motivated to go to the gym. But I showed up my sophomore year, was able to wrestle before becoming ineligible eventually again. And I was the most improved wrestler for our school my second year. So.
Yeah, that's some good medicine for that coach to kind of put back in his face and say, you didn't believe in me a year ago, but
Yeah.
I never quit. I kept working hard, and I showed up that next season and got better, and then that next season and got better, and then all the way to your senior year and had an excellent year, and nearly made it to CIF your senior year, but came up just a bit short. But folks, the story is just getting started. Now, you get out of high school, and
Hey, Brian,
yeah,
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
So the end of my sophomore year, what happened with me was I got kicked off the wrestling team. I couldn't even finish the season. I quit school. Like I literally left my high school and I was going to do a continuation school, basically where you go and, and I did. I ended up going to this continuation school, and I thought I was done wrestling at that point. And what happened to me was the head wrestling coach for the team, who I'm still in contact to this day, stepped into my life at that point. And that was my sophomore year. And his name is John Isel. And he stepped into my life, petitioned the school, got me back into school. So I was able to get back into that school starting my junior year. And then once he did all that for me, then I knew there was no turning back. There's a ton of the story with him and I, but he basically stepped in my life as like a father figure and put me back on the right track. So I wanted to mention that about a big reason I didn't quit. I had a good person like that.
Right. No, I'm glad you did. You had that mentor in your life that, was able to put a train that had been derailed, if you will, and put you back on the tracks in a way that would add so much meaning and value to your life as you would continue to grow and to have that father figure that you did not have in your life to believe in you and to advocate for you would be all the reason in the world to want to work harder at your craft, in which you did. Now, we get through high school. You end up joining the Coast Guard. Can you explain how that all came to be?
Yeah, so I actually come from a family of Marines, believe it or not. I have one uncle who went Navy, one uncle who went Army. The uncle in the Army was from my dad's side. And then I grew up, my grandfather my grandfather's brother, my great uncle, was killed in Pearl Harbor. My grandfather joined the Marines, I think they said 8 days later. And then his son, my uncles, the guys that I grew up looking up to were all Marines. And so I actually was going to join the Marines. My neighbor, who became my best friend through high school, ended up joining the Marines. I actually took my ASVAB test with the Marine Corps, and that was my goal. And so fast forward a little bit, just to not take too long of the story, but a buddy of mine, before I signed up, because I was still, 17 years old, I think, when I took the ASVAB. I think that's about right. Mm-hmm. And a buddy of mine who was on the wrestling team with me convinced me just to go talk to the recruiter with him for the Coast Guard. And I went in to the Coast Guard and I said, yeah, well, the Marines, you could also wrestle for the Marine Corps. And I knew about that. And the Coast Guard recruiter said, oh, you can actually wrestle for the Coast Guard, but you wrestle for the Navy team. That's how it works. It falls underneath the Navy for sports. But check out this video. And he threw the video out of the Coast Guard doing their stuff, jumping out of helicopters, hats backwards, told me I could live in San Diego and Hawaii or wherever I wanted to go. And I was sold. I was sold on the Coast Guard. I just thought that it was a really cool opportunity for me. And to be honest with you, it was a blessing for me because everything worked out from there.
The Coast Guard is no joke, folks, down in San Diego, downtown San Diego, across the street from the airport, right there on San Diego Bay. They have everything that you could think of, the ships, the helicopters, and they are constantly moving and staying very busy, whether it be drugs or rescues out at sea, you name it. Do you have a story that stands out to you that you like to share with us about the Coast Guard?
So if you kind of look at my career path, the Coast Guard kind of encompassed everything that I like to do. I was after the Coast Guard, I was a police officer. I got my start doing law enforcement in the Coast Guard, went to a school, became a boarding team member, 18 years old, carried a gun, did all that stuff. I like the search and rescue aspect of it. I'm a firefighter nowadays, but I like the search and rescue aspect of it. I was a lifeguard as a kid, so I became a rescue swimmer for the Coast Guard. And not one of the cool ones that jump out of the helicopters, but, for my boat, my unit, which was really cool. And it was just, I really liked it. When I first got to my unit, because I really, just being 100% honest, I really did Coast Guard work for like a year total. And then I ended up becoming a full-time athlete. And it was very lucky. When I got to my unit, right out of boot camp, I asked my boss, who I said, hey, the Coast Guard or the recruiter told me that there's a chance I could wrestle for the Navy team. And of course, this was pre-technology. We had computers and internet, but couldn't just look it up on your phone, or there's no way to really figure it out, at least that I knew of. So he was my resource to find out about it. And he said, yeah, I've never heard of that. I don't think that's actually true. The recruiters will tell you whatever they want to get you in the door. So at that time, again, I thought that I was done wrestling. I thought my wrestling career was over. I was 18. You know what? I was actually stationed initially in Hawaii. So I wasn't like I was in a bad place to be. I was a young single guy in the Coast Guard living in Hawaii. And but I was a little bit upset when he told me that wasn't true. But luckily for me, my boss, and I'm in contact with this guy still to this day too, was a great guy, great boss, and he actually did some research for me. And then about a month later, he called me into his office and said, hey, just so you know, they accepted you, or the command approved you to go try out for the Navy wrestling team. And he already approved you to go if you get accepted. Like, he did all the legwork and found out everything and did everything for me, basically minus speaking to the coach. And, like, that's a huge reason why I was able to make it to even figure out what the team was. And so, long story short, the Olympic coach of the Navy team, Rob Herman is his name, called me on the phone and he said, yeah, usually you have to do a tryout, but since you're in Hawaii and you couldn't make it to the tryout, we don't have very many big guys. We'd like to bring you out to the camp. And a few months later, I was in Pensacola, Florida, wrestling as an 18-year-old against some grown men. So just,
Wow.
yeah.
That brought you literally coast to coast and beyond.
Oh, yeah.
From San Diego to Hawaii, all the way to Pensacola. I mean, three great towns. I mean, you couldn't, and it's probably a good thing you joined the Coast Guard, because I think that would end up having the most opportunity there, because, let's face it, the Marine Corps, the Army, and all those other branches of service, they got, a lot of big guys, so it was good that you were going into a unit that didn't have that size, that you were able to kind of, solidify, your spot on a team. Of course, you had to work hard for it once you got there, but you had to definitely, prove your worth on the team. Now, you would end up going and being on Team USA and the 2008 Olympic team in Beijing, China. What was the road to get there like? So you get to Pensacola, you start wrestling, you're on the world-class athlete program in the military under the Coast Guard, which was under the Navy. What was it like? What was the journey like, starting there in Pensacola and working your way all the way up to getting to the 2008 Olympics?
So I like to, the journey to me, it started before I was in the military, because like I told you, my life of 1 in 15, and that was at JV my freshman year, and ended up having a good coach in high school who took me under his wing, and more than a wrestling coach, he taught me hard work. Ended up in California, which is a tough state, ended up being 44-3 my senior year. So I had a really good, I had a good start, I should say. But then fast forward 6 months, I go through boot camp, I do all that stuff. Rob Herman, the Navy coach, isn't just the Navy coach. He was the Olympic coach. In 1996, he was the head Olympic coach. In 2000, he was the assistant Olympic coach. So, I mean, it wasn't just like some random military guy who was coaching a team. It was like the coach to be with, And I'll be honest with you, it took me about, I won a match my first year at the Armed Forces Championships. Rob sent me back to my command because everybody else just kicked my butt. He said, "You're not ready for nationals yet, but get stronger, keep working hard, come back." And I did just that. I started. I actually started doing 2-a-day workouts as about middle of my sophomore to junior year in high school, and so I just kind of continued on that path. I was working out twice a day. Came back my second year on the military team, got way better. Rob actually told me I was the most improved wrestler that year for the team. But I didn't win a single match at the Armed Forces Championships. And now you got to remember, the guys at Armed Forces Championships are NCAA champs, top 2, top 3 guys in the country. They're wrestling full time. And, but luckily I was good enough by then and impressed Rob enough to where he kept me as long as he could to continue wrestling. And then eventually there was 2 Navy teams. There's a team called the SOPAC team, which is kind of the Navy wrestling team. And then during the main part of the season, I'd go back to Pensacola every year and work with Rob. So every year I just kind of inched a little bit closer to becoming good. And finally, by my third year, I think I was like a silver medalist at the Armed Forces Championships and went to the U.S. Nationals and won a couple matches. But every year I would just kind of just keep grinding, keep getting a little bit better, a little more mature. And my in 2003 because of Rob and the connections that he had, I was actually lucky enough to get a scholarship opportunity to Northern Michigan, where I got a new coach named Ivan Ivanov. And Ivan, I don't know if you've seen like the Bulgarian bags and all that kind of stuff. That's my coach, Ivan. And Ivan was just at a whole different level of coaching. And I eventually became the top 10 ranked guy in the country in 2003 to being the number 2 guy in a year with training with Ivan full time. Stayed with Ivan for 3 years, graduated college, and then eventually moved out to the Olympic Training Center here, where I had another, my coach again was now not only the Olympic coach, but an Olympic champion himself. His name was Momir Petkovic. And I'm trying to fast forward the story a little bit, but there's a lot that goes into it. And I like to tell people, like, basically I worked out 2 to 3 times a day for 12 years, and I was 100% committed. I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't eat bad food. I didn't go out and party. At least the later part of my career, in college I went out and stuff, but the later part of my career, I dove 100% in, and I knew that, some of the kids that I was wrestling, or the grown men now that I was wrestling against, had always been the best wrestlers, and I was kind of playing catch up for a lot of years. And I feel like to be honest with you, I feel like I outworked them. That was kind of all I could do at that point. Was I had to catch up from getting such a late start and not being like one of the better youth wrestlers, high school wrestlers, college wrestlers, to just jumping into this Olympic level of wrestling. And it was a blessing in disguise. I paid my dues, got my butt kicked a lot for a few years, and then I started being the one that was able to do a little bit of the butt kicking myself. So it was good.
Well, yeah, I've seen the videos and the pictures, and an absolute animal. Now, take our to the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, China. You would end up medaling in the Olympic Games in literally elbows with folks like the late Bryant, and sharing a stage with some of the greatest athletes in the world. How did this make you feel, and what type of emotions did you have and experience once you were there in Beijing?
It's kind of funny because my whole life, like my whole goal was I wanted to be an Olympian. That was my end game. And I knew 2008, whether I made the Olympic team or not, I was done after 2008. It's a rough road. And especially back then, there was no financial support. It was hard. You would win money for tournaments, and if you were on the national team, they'd pay you like $1,500 a month to live. It was a rough road to be an athlete. And I'm hoping that it's better for the athletes nowadays, but it was a rough road. So I knew I was done no matter what. And I put my life into it up to that point. Once I made the Olympic team, I don't know if you're aware, but I was a big underdog to make the team in the first place. There was a guy who, like, super great dude, good guy, good person. He was the best wrestler in high school. He was a high school national champion. He was just always good, and a world bronze medalist himself. But he had beat me at every big tournament. I beat him, I think, 2 times prior to the Olympic trials, and I would have to beat him I would have to first make it to the finals, which I barely did because I had some tough matches building up to the finals. And then I'd have to beat him 2 out of 3. And I did it, and it was a big upset to the outsider, but it wasn't a big upset to me because I knew what I put into it up to that point. I knew how hard I was working. We all practiced together at that time, so I kind of knew where I stood, and I really believed in myself. And then once I made the Olympic team, that was it. That was my goal. And so I made the Olympic team. I accomplished my huge goal. I get back to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs on like Sunday after the tournament. And on Monday, I realized, wait a minute, I got 2 months to the Olympics. I could win the Olympics. And I reset and I started training again that first Monday back. Didn't take any breaks. I just, I obviously trained smart. I had the best coaches around me in the world at that point. And, I truly believed in myself that I could win the Olympics. When I showed up at the Olympics, and not just Beijing, we were there for 15 days before I even wrestled, but I had no nerves. It was really weird because, normally you're so nervous for everything and you want to do this and qualify. And at the Olympics, I was just ready to go. It was kind of like weird in a sense. Like I wasn't nervous at the Olympics like I was at the Olympic trials or the national championships or the years and years of wrestling. I almost went out there as I felt like, I have nothing to lose here, probably because I accomplished my lifelong goal just 2 months ago, and I believed in myself. And the whole experience of the Olympics was honestly, everything was just worked out, minus the one match that I lost, of course, but it just worked out perfectly.
You got there and you were battle hardened, and you had achieved everything up until that point that you wanted to get done goal wise. And now that you were there again, you were ready to lay it all out there and put it all and leave it all on the mat and know that that was going to be your last opportunity and your last shot at becoming a champion, at being the best in the world at a sport that has brought you literally all around the world. Since you were, 17, 18 years old. What was it like walking around that large track like all the Olympic athletes do when they start to announce all the different countries? And you guys were all in the same uniform. Like I said, you were out there rubbing elbows with Kobe Bryant with Team USA on the, with the basketball team. You guys all have the same little, the jackets, the jumpsuits and the white hats you guys had. Describe that feeling of being one of the world's best and sharing that Olympic stage. I mean, folks, we're talking the Olympics. You know, a fraction of the world's population makes it to something like this.
Yeah.
Describe, I mean, and I know you didn't have a lot of emotion. You were just battle hardened. But at some point, when you were walking around that track with all those other athletes, there had to have been some sort of moment that went through your head to say, "I did it. I did it. I don't even need to wrestle one match. I'm here. I worked my way here." What did that moment feel like?
So it was really, and you're talking about the opening ceremonies when we all did that. It was really very, very, made me feel very proud. Because what you don't see is before we walk in to the opening ceremonies, I got to go meet George W. Bush, the president at the time. I met Kobe Bryant during that same time. And then you said walking in, like, so that, I mean, I just met the president, right? Like that was, to me, that was the coolest guy that I met, obviously. Meeting Kobe Bryant, to me at that time, I was just like, he's great. He's phenomenal. I actually love hearing the stories about his work ethic and stuff now. But at that time, he wasn't the best athlete, in my opinion, at the Olympics, because I was a freaking wrestler and wrestling was the best sport in the world. And I was walking into the opening ceremonies with my team, but Kobe Bryant and Carmelo Anthony were walking, and myself and I want to say it was Randy Miller, who was a female wrestler who got bronze at the Olympics also, but I'd have to double check on that. But we walked up and we actually walked into the opening ceremonies with Kobe Bryant and Carmelo Anthony. And so I got to see probably the most famous athlete in the whole Olympics walking in and being part of it. And it was a pretty cool experience in that regard with that stuff. And then once we got to the actual dome, they called it the bird's nest, where you walked through, probably what you saw on TV. Mm-hmm. I was walking with the best athletes in the world. I had my Olympic team with me, so that was, it was just a sense of pride, and it, it's kind of undescribable. But yeah, it was definitely an overwhelming sense of pride, and just like, we all earned the opportunity to be there. And yeah, that's about it. But
Kid from Lancaster, California, who didn't have the easiest of childhoods, would be representing the red, white, and blue. Yes, Team USA in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and would go on to medal in the Olympics, and be the last Olympic wrestler for Team USA, and Greco Roman, I believe, right? The last medaler.
Greco, yep.
Yeah, and Greco wrestling. So phenomenal. I mean, just what you have done and accomplished is true. It's truly remarkable. I mean, I don't even really have the words for it, but this is just really the beginning of your story. and for a lot of people, that would be, oh, well, that's where the book ends. That's it. But no, you serve your country in the Coast Guard. You represent your country in the Olympics, and you do it in a very honorable way. And then you say, I'm going to continue my life of service as a public servant, and I'm going to become a police officer. And you go ahead and do that. And folks, let me tell you, Adam, it is a mountain of a man. Again, albeit he's a gentle giant, but imagine running into this guy in a dark alley. I could just hear those jailhouse stories right now. Oh man, I got arrested by an Olympic athlete cop. Guys in jail will be like, yeah, whatever. I mean, come on now. I've seen you in uniform. We used to do a lot of ride-alongs together, and very, very level-headed, just massive RoboCop type kind of like. What was it like being a police officer after all this great accomplishments that you have done in your life? A lot of people just kind of sidestep you a little bit and say, "Oh, I don't want to get in that guy's way."
I don't know if that's the mindset of some of the guys that I dealt with. Maybe it was that I didn't realize, but you got to remember, a lot of the times you're dealing with people who aren't necessarily 100% right in their head for whatever reason. But I liked being a cop a lot. Like, that was something that I thought was a calling for me. And some of my best friends are still guys that I was in the academy with, or that I worked with on the SWAT team. And, it was a great job for me. I have nothing negative to say about any of my time doing it. But, I ended up, obviously, you said it in the intro, I'm a firefighter now, and I ended up being a police officer for 8 years total, and then switching to the fire department. And, I like this side of it too. And there's a lot of things I like better about this side, but there's a lot of things that I miss as well. So.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And I rode along with you, I don't know, 100 times over probably a 4-year period. And folks, Adam was a cop's cop, a great police officer. He did a lot of community policing. Kids would look up to him. He served his community with honor. Then he would later go on to be a member of the SWAT team. Again, another elite force. Describe being a member of the SWAT team in a city where, the SWAT team is used fairly often.
Yeah. The SWAT team was the job where I felt like, okay, I'm with another group of a team very similar to, when you're a cop on the streets, you have your team, that will come and help you and stuff, but you're usually working alone, or with one person you respond to a call. But with the SWAT team, it was like, it was cool to be part of a team again. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I really enjoyed the training aspect of it. And I say this all the time, and the firefighters might hate me for it, but being on the SWAT team was the coolest job that I've ever had. And I don't think that I'll never have a job that cool again, in the sense of like what you actually did on a day-to-day basis and the type of calls and the things you see and the adrenaline rush of certain calls, from that respect, it's the coolest job that, I think I'll ever do. But I'm also glad that I'm not doing that anymore, because there was some downsides to it as far as being on call 24/7. Like, I was on the SWAT team for 4 years. And unless you're on vacation, which is 2-week periods every year, you're on call 24/7. It is your life. You can't leave the city. And, I made a transition, and my number one goal right now in life is to be a good husband and a good father to my kids and be able to do their stuff. So my life now revolves around, I like my job. I have a good job, but I work to be able to do stuff and provide for my family. And my number one goal right now is just to make sure that I raise 2 good boys, and yeah, that's kind of it right now.
Well, you are a champion to your family, and you are a tremendous father and a tremendous husband. I see it all the time. You have dedicated your life to your 2 boys and all of their sports and everything it may be, to putting a smile on their face, and again, and providing as a great man, as a great father, and being a tremendous positive influence in their life. Now, you've got this beautiful family, and you see so much trauma, and you've seen so much trauma during your career. How do you turn that off when you go home after being a police officer and seeing so much, then on the SWAT team, now as a Denver firefighter? I mean, you've got to see some really bad and emotional stuff out there. How do you keep that at work and not really bring that home with you, and let it weigh you down?
I wish I had the right answer for that, because I think to some level, it affects everybody. I've seen things that, um, I've been kind of in the public service. I was a police officer for 8. I've been a firefighter now for going on my 7th year. And when I was in the Coast Guard for 5, like, I've seen pretty much everything you could think of. Right. And I don't think that, I think it probably affects everybody, but I think everybody has like a little different way of coping with it, or, I don't really have an answer for it. I know, there's definitely some things that are still in my head, but I try to do my best to separate the job from my home life, and when I'm home, I'm home. When I'm at work, I'm at work.
Mhm.
But like I said, I think certain calls, like kids, for example, getting hurt or even killed or whatever, like, no normal person's ever going to forget that call. It's just how you deal with it. So I'm not an expert in that
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
emotional side of things.
Mhm.
But for me, I feel like it hasn't affected me to my knowledge. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but I think maybe some people are just a little bit more mentally equipped to do that. So, and then I have very supportive wife and friends and other people who were in situations, and I kind of surround myself with very similar, like-minded people.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I don't know.
It does take a special person to do the job you do, and again, the honorable walk that you have taken and put on public display in a life of public service, and that's not an easy walk, and you've done it well, and you've done it with so much pride, and with so much honor and integrity, and all those great hallmarks of what make people just great human beings. Um, Now, a lot of people look up to you. You inspire so many. You encourage so many. Just looking at you in public or through here, whatever it may be, you are this mountain of a man. When you walk into rooms, the sea parts. And everybody knows, trust me. Everybody knows that Adam Wheeler is in the room. You draw that type of presence. You draw that type of attention. I don't know if it's confidence or whatever it may be. For somebody that may be struggling out there today, do you have any good words of wisdom or any advice that you can give somebody to help keep them focused and help keep them on track and help keep them striving toward their goals that you accomplish, even when you had every doubter out there saying, he's done, stick a fork in him. But here you are today, continuing to lead this champion type lifestyle. And you still work out and you still fuel your body with great food and nutrition. And like I said, you are doing it. You're not a talker. You're a man of action. Can you help some of our listeners out there that may be struggling right now?
Kind of a hard question to answer because I know,
It's okay.
I know your crowd and all your, you definitely have some friends that have gone through a lot harder stuff than I have. And, you know, for me, it's been like I said, I think I have a little bit of a mental toughness to me that I learned from sports and then obviously through my career path. Um, but everything that I said that I've done today, um, I I don't know if any of it would have been possible if I didn't have a good core group of people in my life that I could trust, that I could talk to, that believed in me. Um, Trust me, there was times when I would go to a tournament, not perform the way I wanted to, and this is going back to wrestling, and like down on myself. But I had a wife who was a Division 1 or a Division 2 college athlete, also, who would be there to build me back up. I had a coach who one time saw me lose, and I was emotional, and walks up to me and he says the right things, tells me it was, this is a blessing in disguise. Just wait, this isn't how we trained or whatever the case may be. Like I could recall every coach that I told you about um, at the senior level when I was a grown man, from Rob Herman in 2008 when I lost the national championships, what he told me, what Yvonne told me when I lost in a practice match one time and I was pissed about it, and what Momir Petkovic told me when I lost at a tournament when we were in Serbia one time. Like I remember these specific things where I had guys and my wife, and other people who supported me and believed in me. So, find, and I know it's not everybody can do it, but find a good core group of people. Reach out to somebody, talk to somebody. There's people that are out there willing to help. And, I think just don't be too tough to talk to other people.
Hmm. Especially in this alpha centric lifestyle that guys like you live. You are larger than life. You're very successful. So a lot of times people aren't going to want to show their weaknesses, and especially growing up without a father. You didn't have that father to give you that advice and to kind of lead you down this successful path. So you had to figure out a lot on yourself. You had to grow up quickly. You had to find your own mentors, and mentors had to find you. You got very lucky when people stopped what they were doing and said, you know what? I believe in this kid. I'm going to take him underneath my wing and I'm going to help guide him because I see something in this kid. I see potential in this kid. Um, our youth right now are under a lot of stress in sports. There's so much competition out there. You have a few words for a kid that maybe that freshman in high school right now that has a 1-15 record, or he got cut from the baseball team, or he got cut from the football team. Give them one sentence, one sentence of some advice that you can give a kid right now.
Okay. Okay. Before I gotta just clarify one thing before I forget, because I don't want to sound like negative. So you said, so I actually did have my father growing up. My parents got divorced when I was 3, and I would see my dad a couple times a year. So it wasn't like he was in there. So, you know what I mean? So like, I did have a father. I just didn't see him very often, and he didn't raise me, if that makes sense. But to the kid who's wants to quit, that's really hard to summarize in one sentence. But I think I got a sentence for you, but I'd like to just say a few things. Like if you look at all these people, I don't know if you've watched the documentary on Derek Jeter or Michael Jordan or any of these guys. There's documentaries out there on all these guys. All of them, none of them started off being who they eventually ended up being. Right? So I don't know. I think the key is, for me, like, I was motivated differently. I was motivated by somebody's telling me I can't do something. So the sentence is, believe and achieve, overcoming obstacles to excel. I'm just kidding about that, but
No, but look at that. That's his book right there, folks.
Yeah.
And you can learn a lot about Adam Wheeler in this book, and you can get it on Amazon. And guys, a kid that was maybe not heading down the right path, a 1 in 15 freshman wrestler, would go on to join the Coast Guard, would go on to being a 2008 Olympic medalist in Beijing, China, would go on to be a successful police officer, then a member of the SWAT team, now a Denver firefighter. Again, a life of dedication, a life of service, a dedicated father and a husband, a tremendous role model. And Adam, it is an honor to call you a friend and a fellow brother. You guys like you don't come around very often, and when they do, you gotta keep these guys around, because these guys are what we are all about as men, as Americans, as leaders, and as husbands. They say you are who you roll with. You need to hang out with great, successful people. You need to hang out with men that are equally yoked. Men need men. And that's how it is. And when I mean equally yoked, I don't mean the same size. I mean same goals, the same passions, the same commonalities, right? You are working to be the best still. And it doesn't matter if it's on the mat. You could still work to be the best dad, to be the best provider, to give your family a lot of the stuff that you didn't have growing up. And like I said, you've done this. You've done it well, and again, you deserve all the credit in the world. I mean, you really do.
Well, I appreciate it.
And I just want to thank you for joining us on today's program. I know that this will help a lot of folks out there who are looking for some sort of inspiration or encouragement. And like I said, folks, you can get a signed copy of Adam's book. Connect with him on Instagram at the Adam Wheeler. And you can also go to Amazon if you don't want a signed copy, and just Google Adam Wheeler book. Believe and Achieve will pop right up. And guys, there you have it. Mr. Adam Wheeler, the man, the myth, the legend.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine. Until next time, for Tuesdays with Tally, good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.